Greetings friends, you're watching the Crestmoto channel. In this video, I want to tell you about a rare but extremely interesting and unusual motorcycle called Amazonas, which comes from Brazil and was produced for 9 years from 1978 to 1986. And in order to understand why exactly such a motorcycle appeared in Brazil at the end of the 70s, we definitely need to get acquainted with the environment in which the Amazonas was forged. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy watching.
Andar de moto aí por São Paulo, no Amazonas.
What do we know about Brazil? Actually, not that much. There's the city of Rio de Janeiro with the statue of Christ on the mountain, the Amazon River, forests, piranhas, favelas, and, well, they have a strong national soccer team. In the 1960s and 1970s, Brazil was under a military dictatorship. Let's put it this way. Even before those years, Brazil wasn't exactly thriving and was mostly a raw material supplier for stronger countries. And the government changed regularly with enviable frequency. Life under the dictatorship wasn't boring either. After the military coup of 1964, the Brazilian military was more interested in political control and handed over economic policy to a group of trusted technocrats. The period from 1967 to 1974 in Brazil is characterized by the highest rate of economic growth in the world in terms of GDP. About 10% per year. However, at what cost? This growth was achieved by reducing labor costs, attracting foreign investment, and increasing external borrowing. While labor productivity increased by 56% during this period, real wages decreased by 31%. The country was developing, industry became an important and significant sector, but ordinary people did not get any richer. Almost everything that was not produced in Brazil was either not imported at all or was subject to crazy taxes. This also applied to large displacement motorcycles from leading global companies. First of all these companies are located almost equally far from Brazil. Secondly, there is no money for such purchases. But on the other hand, there is industry and there are inquisitive minds. And it was exactly these conditions that led to the creation of this rare motorcycle. Two handy guys from São Paulo, Luis Gomes and Jose Bessona, dreamed of riding a big and powerful motorcycle. With no money, they chose to build a motorcycle using whatever they found at the junkyard. As a power unit, they decided to use an air-cooled flat-4 engine from a Volkswagen Beetle. Why this particular engine? Because at that time it was the most common engine in Brazil, and it had been produced here since 1953. You could find spare parts or get it repaired even in remote places. So the guys managed to put together a couple of beaters, and if it weren't for what happened next, that would probably have been the end of Luis and Jose's success. An investor appeared on the horizon. Daniel Ferreiro Rodrigues somehow heard about the guys and came to make a deal for a motorcycle. Daniel was a smart businessman, and he was like, "Guys, I've got a proposition. Here's the money. Let's set up production. I saw Harleys with the police. They've been there for over 30 years. They're no good anymore. So here we are, such good guys. We'll update the motorcycle fleet and at the same time skim a little off the budget." Everyone liked the idea. The factory opened, the workers were given files and passes to all the city dumps. Rodrigues told the government that he would build a completely Brazilian motorcycle, and they liked the idea so much that they signed a contract with him even before they saw a working prototype. Amazonas Motocicletas Especiais. That's what they named the company. AME used two versions of Volkswagen Boxer engines in their motorcycles, with displacements of 1.3 and 1.6 liters. The first one boasted 38 horsepower, while the second had 50. The 1.6 engine produced a good torque of 102 Newton meters, and the overwhelming majority of Amazonas motorcycles were made with this engine option. The frame was quite primitive, basically like the entire chassis. It's unclear who designed the frame, but they didn't think to use the engine crankcase as a load-bearing element. There was a minor issue with the 4-speed Volkswagen gearbox, which did not approve of being modified for foot shifting. The guys saved money on the driveshaft by using a chain drive. They kept the reverse gear, and it was engaged manually with a lever near the right leg, a useful feature when you need to move this 408-kilogram beast away from even the smallest curb on a slope. The suspension is also primitive, a 48mm front fork, and at the back, a swing arm with 2 shock absorbers. The brakes, AME bought them from a Ford car factory near São Paulo, where they used cast iron discs 10 millimeters thick and about 300 millimeters in diameter. The unsprung weight, well, it was what it was. By the way, the braking system couldn't really boast about its effectiveness. The wheels were 16 inches with car-type tires 5 inches wide, and on the side there was the word Amazonas. And to hide all the mess piled up over the engine, like the electric starter, wires, connectors, and so on, they decided to generously cover the motorcycle with bodywork. Since Brazil has vast spaces, after all, it's a huge country, and long stretches of road where, in the 70s, gas stations were still rare, the guys equipped the Amazonas with a large 32-liter tank, which was enough for about 480 kilometers of travel. The maximum speed was around 140 kilometers per hour. Apparently, the first working prototype rolled off the assembly line in '77, and over the following years, several hundred were sent to the police department. The motorcycle started at $4,000 on the domestic market as of 1984. The motorcycle's handling was terrible both at low and high speeds. Don't think that the police on Amazonas were chasing bandits through the narrow streets of the favelas. These boxer-engined rhinos were mainly used for slow-moving escorts of high-ranking officials during parades. It should be noted that for the most part, these motorcycles, while in service, covered impressive distances with minimal maintenance. The reliability of the engine and the simplicity of the design played a big role. If it broke down, the motorcycle could be repaired in any backstreet workshop. As time went by, Rodriguez made some minor improvements. For example, he reduced the diameter of the front fork tubes to 41 millimeters and started using motorcycle tires. He also expanded the product line, which included the Super Escort, Sport, and Turismo models. And then he sold EMI to a guy named Guillermo Hanut Filho, whose idea was to bring these machines to the European and American markets. In 1985, Filho opened a store in Houston. But here's the problem. The pre-Pleistocene VW engine didn't meet the standards. Guillermo decided to sell the chassis, body, and other components, excluding the engine, as a kit for building custom cars. And it was up to the American to find an engine that met the standards at a local junkyard. But the Yankees didn't care about this contraption at all. And in the end, only about 10 kits were sold in Houston. The era of Brazilian giants was coming to an end. It is estimated that about 450 motorcycles were produced at the factory over the years. I should note that at the end of the 80s, Brazil's economy went through another crisis, and AME was one of the many companies that disappeared. However, in the early 90s, the Amazonas concept was revised, and another company, Tecpama in São Paulo, produced a small run of the Kahina 1600 motorcycle between 1990 and 1992. Except for a few promotional images and some listings of used motorcycles, there are practically no details about the Kahina. The engine was still the VAG 1.6 now, with a power output of 64 horsepower, and the weight was reduced to 300 kilograms dry. Well, in 1999, Harley-Davidson opened an assembly plant in Manaus, a city on the Amazon River. The motorcycles produced here were not subject to import tax and became more affordable for the population. That's the story, my friends, of the massive Brazilian Amazonas motorcycles. That brings my story to an end. As always, this was Crasmodo Channel. Don't forget to share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for your support, especially the financial support. See you next time.